After our family reunion, I opened my banking app and froze. The balance glared back at me. 486. Yesterday, there had been over 15. Zero. My stomach dropped so fast I thought I might be sick. Across the room, Dad leaned back in his chair, a smug smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "We needed it more than you," he said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. My ears rang. "You... what?" He shrugged. "You'll be fine. You've always been fine." I could barely feel my hands as I reached into my bag, my voice low but sharp. "Then you won't mind what's coming next." They laughed, Dad, Mom, my brother, until a sudden, thunderous bang rattled the walls. The front door flew open, and everything changed. The door slammed against the wall with such force the picture frames rattled. For a heartbeat, everyone froze, Dad's smug grin faltering just enough for me to notice. It wasn't the police, not yet, just the wind catching the door from the storm outside. But that crack in their confidence? I'd take it. I stepped inside, shutting the door with deliberate care. My phone was still in my hand, the banking app open, the impossible number staring at me. "You drained my account," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Dad gave a little snort, as if I'd accused him of stealing a cookie, not thousands of dollars. "Don't be dramatic, Raylan. We're family. Family doesn't take without asking," I shot back. Mom sighed from the couch, her knitting needles clicking like metronomes. "Honey, you have no mortgage, no kids, and a good job. You'll recover. We needed it more than you did." The way she said "we like it" was some noble cause made my skin crawl. My younger brother Jake was sprawled in the recliner, scrolling his phone. Without looking up, he muttered, "You always help. That's what you're for." That sentence landed like a punch. I'd heard versions of it my whole life, when I paid for Dad's truck repairs, when I covered Jake's overdue rent, when Mom forgot to pay the electric bill. I'd told myself it was temporary, that they appreciated it. But looking around now, I didn't see gratitude. I saw entitlement. "How did you even get my account info?" I demanded. Jake finally glanced up, his smirk matching Dad's. "Maybe don't log into your bank on the family laptop and walk away." I gripped my phone tighter, willing myself not to hurl it across the room. "That's not just careless, it's theft." Dad's eyes narrowed. "Watch your language." "Language?" I laughed, short and bitter. "You emptied my life savings and I need to watch my language?" Mom set down her knitting. "Raylan, you're overreacting. It's not like we spent it on junk. We paid bills, bought groceries." I cut her off. "You didn't ask, you just decided." Silence stretched, taut as a wire. I could feel my heartbeat in my teeth. Finally, Dad leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You've always been the strong one. We knew you could handle it." And just like that, I realized this wasn't an accident. It was a pattern, one I'd been enabling for years. But tonight, that pattern was going to break. I wish I could say this was the first time, that the shock in my chest was because they'd crossed some new line. But the truth? They'd been inching toward this for years. It started small, so small I didn't even see it happening. The summer after college, Dad's truck broke down. I was only a month into my first real job, barely scraping by on my own, but he called me like it was a given. "You'll cover it, right? I'll pay you back when I can." He never did. Then came Jake's temporary move back home after getting fired. He'd forgotten to pay his phone bill, and Mom asked me to just take care of it until he gets back on his feet. I did. The next month, it happened again. By the time I was 27, I was paying their property taxes, just this once, replacing a washing machine that broke out of nowhere, and covering a short-term loan for Jake when he got in over his head with credit cards. They never paid me back, not once, and every time, it came with the same script. "You've always been the responsible one. You have a steady job. You don't have kids to feed. Family helps each other." Except somehow the help only went one way. I told myself it was fine, that this was just what family did when someone was struggling. I worked extra hours, skipped vacations, and turned down things I wanted so I could be there for them. They never asked how it affected me. When I lost my job for 6 months, I lived on instant noodles and canned soup. I never asked them for a dime. When I got promoted, I kept sending them money without question, because that's what they expected. Somewhere along the way, I stopped being a daughter or a sister. I became a safety net they could throw themselves onto without ever wondering if I could bear the weight. The worst part? I thought I was choosing this. I thought it made me good. It wasn't until last year, when Mom called to say the water was going to be shut off, that something in me cracked. I sent the payment, but when I looked at my own bills afterward, I realized I was juggling more of their obligations than my own. And yet, every time I even hinted that it was too much, the guilt came rolling in like clockwork. Don't you love us? You know we'd do the same for you. You're making this a bigger deal than it is. So I stayed quiet, I kept paying, and I told myself it was easier than fighting. Until tonight. Seeing my balance gutted $15,000 gone in a single swipe wasn't just theft. It was the final proof of what I'd been trying not to see. They didn't see me at all. Only what I could give them. And I was done giving. I stared at my father. $15,000, gone. And you're sitting here acting like I'm overreacting? Dad leaned back, arms crossed, like a judge delivering a verdict. We didn't steal it. We borrowed it. I laughed, short, sharp, ugly. Borrowed? You didn't even tell me. Mom's voice was soft, almost rehearsed. We knew you'd say no. And you can afford it. That's not an excuse. Jake finally set his phone down. It's not like we blew it on a vacation. We paid bills, kept the lights on, put food on the table. My eyes narrowed. So, why is my account showing multiple ATM withdrawals and a 1-200 charge at an electronics store? Jake's jaw tightened. You went through my transactions? It's my money. I'll go through whatever I want. The room thickened with silence. Only the hum of the refrigerator filled the space. Dad broke it. You've always been the one we could count on. Don't start acting brand new now. I folded my arms. Maybe that's the problem, you've been counting on me too much. Mom frowned like I'd just spit in the family soup. Raylin, family takes care of each other, and who takes care of me? No one answered. I sat down slowly, my bag still at my side. Inside, my laptop was tucked neatly against a folder of printed statements proof. I hadn't planned on confronting them tonight, but part of me knew this wasn't going to end with just a conversation. Dad's voice dropped lower, a warning tone I'd heard my whole life. You're making this uglier than it needs to be. We'll pay you back. When? Mom glanced at Dad. Soon. I held her gaze. Define soon. Her eyes flickered away. That was all I needed to see. They had no plan. They never did. I'd learned something valuable over the years. People who live off your generosity hate it when you start asking for specifics. Jake grabbed his jacket, clearly done with the conversation. You're not going to call the cops on your own family, Ray. Don't be stupid. My lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. We'll see. As he left the room, Mom muttered, You wouldn't dare. I didn't answer. Instead, I reached into my bag, pretending to check my phone, but really, I was opening a secure folder of screenshots, bank records, withdrawal dates, every payment tagged with the account number it came from. My hands were steady now. The shaking from earlier was gone, replaced with something colder. Because the truth was, they were right about one thing. I'd always been the dependable one. And that meant when I decided to act, I wouldn't hesitate. I left that night without slamming the door. Slamming doors make noise. I needed silence. The rain had stopped, but the pavement still shimmered under the streetlights. My car smelled faintly of old coffee and lavender air freshener. I slid inside, pulled the door shut, and just sat there for a moment, letting the quiet sink into my bones. Then I opened my laptop. The hotspot on my phone lit up, the connection steady enough to pull up my bank's security dashboard. Every withdrawal, every purchase, every transfer was right there, color-coded by merchant type. Gas stations, grocery stores, but also a salon, an electronics megastore, a high-end steakhouse. My cursor hovered over the Export to PDF button. Click. The file landed neatly into a folder I'd labeled in all caps, Evidence. As it downloaded, my mind drifted back to last Thanksgiving. Dad had leaned over the table, carving turkey like a king distributing favors. Between bites, he'd asked, You'll cover the property tax this year, right? I'd nodded automatically, even though my own rent had gone up. Mom had smiled like it was already settled. Jake had poured himself another drink and muttered, "You're a lifesaver." The truth was, I'd been the family ATM for so long that my refusal tonight probably felt, to them, like betrayal. Good. I snapped back to the present and logged into an old email account. I rarely used one I'd set up in college. In its draft folder, I started building a timeline. Dates, amounts, descriptions, which charges matched whose spending habits. The electronics store? That was Jake. He'd been bragging about his new gaming console just 2 weeks ago. The salon? Mom's bi-weekly indulgence. The steakhouse? That was Dad's go-to for business dinners that never led to business. My fingers moved faster. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the way they laughed in my face, like my boundaries were a joke. By midnight, I had a 60-page document, transactions, screenshots, even a few old text messages where they'd openly admitted using my money until payday. Payday had apparently never come. I sent the whole package to a cloud backup and, for good measure, a locked USB drive I kept in my glove compartment. The next morning, over coffee, I called an old college friend who now worked in the local police department. I didn't give her details yet, just asked if she could point me towards someone in financial crimes. She gave me a name and told me to mention hers. "Are you okay, Ray?" she asked. I looked out my kitchen window, where the first sunlight was brushing over the wet grass. "Not yet," I said. "But I will be." By the end of the week, I'd booked an appointment with the detective she recommended. I had no illusions about how ugly this could get. Family cases always were, but I also knew this. They'd counted on me to be the quiet one, the dependable one, the one who wouldn't dare. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The call came 3 days later. Mom's voice was sugar-coated, the way it always was when she wanted something. "Sweetheart, we need to talk. Just us. Tonight." Her tone made it sound like I'd been caught sneaking out past curfew, not like they'd drained my savings account. "What's this really about?" I asked. "Don't be suspicious," she said, light and breezy. "We just need to clear the air." I almost laughed. Clearing the air was family code for getting you to agree with us without actually apologizing. Still, I agreed to come. I wanted to see them in person, wanted to watch their faces when I didn't fold. When I pulled into the driveway that evening, the house was lit up like it was hosting a dinner party. Through the front window, I saw Dad at the head of the table, Jake leaning against the wall, Mom fussing with silverware. No food in sight. This wasn't dinner. This was an ambush. The second I stepped in, Jake grinned. "Well, look who decided to show up." I set my bag down slowly, deliberately. "Let's just get this over with." Mom gestured toward an empty chair. "Sit. Please." I stayed standing. Dad cleared his throat. "Raylan, we know you're upset, but you have to understand we were struggling. We didn't have another option." Jake added, "You've always been the one we can rely on." "You didn't ask," I said flatly. "You took. That's not family, that's theft." Mom's lips tightened. "Don't use that word. We're not criminals. We used it for things that mattered." I tilted my head. "Like a 1-200 gaming console? 600 in salon visits? Steakhouse dinners?" Jake's smile vanished. "You've been spying on us? It's called checking my bank account," I said. Dad's voice dropped. "You're making this a bigger deal than it needs to be. We can pay you back." I raised an eyebrow. "With what money?" No one spoke. I let the silence stretch until Mom finally shifted uncomfortably. "We thought you'd understand. You've always been there for us." "That was my mistake," I said. "I thought you cared enough to ask first." Jake scoffed. "So what, you're gonna run to the cops? Put your own family in jail? Don't be stupid." I almost smiled. "You'll find out soon enough." For a second, the room froze. Dad studied me, trying to read if I was bluffing. Mom looked like she wanted to say something but thought better of it. I picked up my bag. "If you have anything else to say, now's the time. Because the next time we have this conversation, it won't just be us in the room." Jake muttered something under his breath, but no one else spoke. As I reached for the doorknob, I could feel all their eyes on me. Not with guilt, not even with fear, with disbelief. They still thought I wouldn't dare. 2 nights later, the call came from Detective Harlan. "We're ready if you are," she said. I was. By 6:45 p.m. I was standing on my parents' porch again, the same porch where I'd once left birthday gifts, grocery bags, and envelopes of cash. Tonight, my bag was heavier not with money but with proof. Inside, the table was set like before. Dad at the head, Jake slouched in the corner, Mom fussing with napkins. I'd barely stepped in when Jake smirked. "Guess you decided not to make a scene after all." I set my bag down, unzipped it, and pulled out a stack of neatly stapled spreadsheets. "Let's talk numbers," Dad groaned. "Raylan, 1,200 at GameHub Electronics, 614 at Bella Lux Salon, 347 to pay off a car loan, 300 in cash withdrawals 4 times in 1 week, all within 72 hours of my account being accessed without permission." Jake shifted. "You kept track of all that?" I locked eyes with him. Every single cent. Mom's knitting lay untouched on the table, her hands clasped in front of her. "We told you it was for the family." I leaned forward. "And I told you it's theft." Dad slammed his palm against the table. "Enough. You're our daughter. You've always helped. That's what you're for." I felt the old reflex, the urge to shrink, to smooth things over, but it didn't come. Instead, I reached into my bag again and set down a thin folder. "Detective Harlan has copies of all of this. She's already opened a case file." Jake laughed like I'd just said I'd called a psychic hotline. "You're bluffing." I didn't answer. Instead, I glanced at the clock. 7:00 p.m. Right on schedule. 3 sharp knocks thundered against the front door. Mom jumped. Dad's head whipped toward the sound. Jake froze. The knocks came again. "Open up. Financial Crimes Unit." Dad's voice cracked. You actually..." I stepped aside as the door swung open. Detective Harlan entered first, badge clipped to her jacket. 2 uniformed officers followed, one holding a tablet, the other a clipboard. "Raylan?" Harlan asked. "That's me." She nodded. "Thanks for your cooperation. We'll take it from here." Mom's voice broke. "This is insane. She's our daughter." Harlan didn't blink. "Family ties don't make illegal activity legal, ma'am." Jake stood, hands balled into fists. "We didn't steal anything." She's making it sound worse than it is. Harlan's partner glanced at the paperwork on the table. "Theft over 15. 0 is felony level in this state. You can argue the rest in court." Dad's chair scraped loudly against the floor as he rose. "You're tearing this family apart." I met his glare. "I'm not tearing anything apart. I'm just refusing to pretend the pieces are still whole." The officers began reading rights, taking statements, cataloging the evidence I'd brought. Mom sank into her chair, staring at the tablecloth like she could will herself invisible. Jake muttered under his breath. But when an officer told him to remain seated, he did. For the first time in years, no one was talking over me. No one was dismissing me as dramatic or ungrateful, and they all finally looked small. Harlan glanced at me as she prepared to leave with them in tow. "We'll keep you updated on the next steps." I nodded, slipping my folder back into my bag. As they filed past me, Mom reached for my hand. "Please. We didn't mean to hurt you. We were desperate." I pulled back. "You weren't desperate. You were comfortable, and you thought I'd never stop you." Her eyes glistened. "You've always been the strong one." I shouldered my bag. "Strength isn't letting people bleed you dry. It's knowing when to stop them." Outside, the night air was cold and sharp, the kind that clears your lungs. I stood on the porch until the sound of car doors slamming and engines starting faded into the dark. No one called my name. No one followed me to the driveway. For once, I left without carrying any of their weight. The first call came before I even made it home. I didn't answer. By the time I parked in my apartment lot, I had 13 missed calls and 4 voicemails, 2 from Mom, 1 from Dad, 1 from an unknown number I suspected was Jake. I poured myself a glass of water, sat on the couch, and let the phone buzz on the counter. At 11:15 p.m., curiosity got the better of me. I put the first voicemail on speaker. Mom's voice was shaky but still carried that thread of control she'd always used. "Raylan, you didn't have to do this. We could have handled it as a family. Please, sweetheart, the charges are serious. They're saying we might lose the house." I deleted it without finishing. The next was Dad. "This has gone too far. What happened to loyalty? You're humiliating your own family. Think about what people will say." Delete. Jake's was last, his voice dripping with resentment. "Hope you're happy. My accounts are frozen, I'm under review at work, and Mom can't stop crying. Over a few payments. You ruined our lives. A few payments." $15,000 apparently didn't qualify as a lot to him. The text started the next morning, paragraphs of guilt-laced pleading from Mom, one-line demands from Dad, and rage-tinged insults from Jake. I muted the group thread. For a while, the silence felt almost alien. I caught myself listening for the next buzz, the next emergency, the next "you're the only one we can count on," but nothing came through that I didn't allow. 3 days later, a message arrived from a number I didn't recognize. "I know we haven't talked in years, but I just wanted to say you were right about them." It was from Lily, my cousin on Dad's side. We'd been close as kids before she moved states away. "I used to think you were just cold," her text continued. "Now I think you were brave. What you did, I don't know if I could have." I stared at her words for a long time. Brave. No one in my family had ever called me that. Not every message was kind. One came from a blocked number with no name. "If you drop the charges, we can work something out." I didn't respond. Because here's what I'd finally learned. Every "work something out" in this family meant you give more. We take more. The calls slowed after the first week, replaced by terse, lawyer-filtered messages. My own attorney handled those. In the meantime, I slept better, ate better, went to work without that constant pull of wondering who would need something from me next. For the first time in years, I wasn't bracing for the next crisis, because it wasn't mine to carry anymore. 3 weeks passed. The case was still open, but the noise had died down. No more daily calls. No more sudden emergencies disguised as family bonding. The silence was so complete I almost didn't trust it. Then, one morning, an envelope appeared in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a check for 10 and a short note in neat handwriting. "Raylan." I left him. "You were right about everything, the way they treat you, the way they expect without asking. Watching you stand up for yourself gave me the courage to walk away too. This is for everything you paid for when no one else would rent, groceries, the kids' school fees. I know it's not enough, but I wanted to say thank you, Lily." I read it twice. My chest felt warm in a way I hadn't felt in months, not because of the money, but because for once, someone had seen me. Not as a bank account, not as a safety net, but as a person. That afternoon, I walked through my apartment, noticing how different it felt. The space was still the same couch, the same coffee table, the same faint hum from the fridge, but the air felt lighter. There was no unspoken expectation hanging over me, no guilt pressing between my shoulder blades. I made dinner for myself without mentally calculating what bills I could cover for someone else that week. I put on music and let it fill the room without worrying about missing a call. I drank my coffee on the balcony the next morning and realized I'd gone 24 hours without thinking about them. 3 months after the night everything broke, Detective Harlan called with an update. The charges were moving forward. Jake had lost his job. Dad was scrambling to find a lawyer who would work for less than their dwindling funds. Mom had been trying to sell off extra possessions to cover legal costs. I didn't feel satisfaction. But I didn't feel guilt either. "You okay?" Harlan asked. I looked out at the city skyline, sunlight bouncing off the windows. "Yeah," I said. "I think I am." That night I sat at my desk and wrote a note, one I'd never send but needed to write. "I'm not your bank. I'm not your fallback plan. I'm not here to bleed for you while you laugh in my face. I'm done. And I was done the second you made it clear you never saw me as anything but a resource." I tore the page out, folded it, and slid it into the same envelope that held Lily's note. Not as a reminder of them, but as proof of me. Because peace isn't fireworks or a grand celebration. Peace is sitting in your own home, drinking your coffee, knowing no one's going to ask you for anything you don't want to give, and for the first time in my life, that was enough.